Malice from the Clipse just got accused of robbing a hot dog stand in the middle of a world tour, and the way Malice responded to it might be the most calculated, cold-blooded, genius move we have seen from a rapper all year. And I need you to lock in right now, because by the time this video ends, you are going to see how one Polish hot dog, one screaming restaurant owner, one male strip club, one relentless Instagram troll, and one heartbreaking confession from a basketball legend all connect into the exact same story. The story of who in this culture is actually real and who has been performing the entire time. And trust me, the ending of this one caught even me off guard. Now, before we go any further, I genuinely hope every single one of you is having a blessed day, because the people we are about to discuss today, some of them are not. Some of them are having the worst week of their entire career, and honestly, they earned every second of it. And you already know what to do before we dive in. Hit that like button. Not for me. Do it as a message. Every like on this video is a vote for the real ones over the fakes, and by the end of this, you are going to understand exactly why that matters. And if you are new here, subscribe, because we do this every single day, and the family gets bigger by the hour. So let's get into it, because the first story is so absurd, so perfectly ridiculous, that if I did not have the footage, I would think somebody made it up. Malice. Yes, Malice of the legendary Clipse, half of one of the most respected duos to ever touch a microphone, a man who has been on a victory lap around the entire planet with his brother. A man who has been telling anybody who will listen that this reunion run has been smooth, peaceful, problem-free. That man is now officially accused of stealing a glizzy, a Polish hot dog, on camera. And the woman accusing Malice did not just make an accusation. She made a whole production out of it. Here is what happened. The Clipse tour rolled through her city, and Malice stopped by her Polish hot dog spot. And according to her version of events, Malice walked in, took the hot dog, and left without paying. That is her story. And she told that story at a volume that could rattle windows, calling Malice everything except his government name, dragging his appearance, dragging the Clipse, demanding her money in front of an audience like she was auditioning for something. It was loud. It was aggressive. It was, to put it gently, vibrating at the floor level. But here is where it gets good, because Malice did not do what 99% of celebrities would do. Malice did not ignore it. Malice did not send a publicist. Malice got on camera and released his own video, and what Malice showed the world flipped the entire narrative upside down. In the footage, you can see the whole exchange. Malice is standing there, and the staff is telling him it is on the house. On the house. You can hear it. They are waving the payment away, showing love, telling him to enjoy it. And Malice, being the gracious man that he is thanking them. Over and over. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. God bless. That is what is coming out of his mouth while this situation is supposedly a robbery in progress. Now you tell me, what kind of thief stands there saying thank you, blessing the staff, shaking hands with his security and his cameraman right beside him, in broad daylight, in front of phones, in the middle of a tour where every single move he makes is documented? That is not a theft. That is a misunderstanding at best, and at worst, it is something else entirely. Because here is the part that makes you raise an eyebrow. This woman did not just get mad. She got marketing. She got a viral moment off Malice's name. Her little hot dog stand is now being talked about by every hip-hop page on the internet, and all it cost her was her dignity in that clip. And Malice, to his credit, handled it with a level of composure that honestly deserves to be studied. No yelling back. No threats. No energy matching. Just receipts. Just calm. Just the footage and a quiet confidence of a man who knows exactly who he is and has nothing to hide. And that right there is the first thread of today's bigger picture, so hold on to it. Because the question this whole video is asking is simple. What does real actually look like? And Malice just gave us Exhibit A. Real looks like a man who gets falsely accused of stealing a hot dog on a world tour and responds with grace and receipts instead of rage. But wait, because if you think the hot dog situation was the wildest relationship dynamic we are covering today, you are not ready for what Snoop Dogg just admitted on camera about his wife. And I mean admitted. voluntarily, with his whole chest. And his reason for it is either the most beautiful thing you have ever heard or the most unhinged marriage philosophy in celebrity history, and honestly, it might be both. And let me slow down for a second, because the details of this exchange deserve a full autopsy. Think about the setting. This is not some random Tuesday. This is a victory lap that has been years in the making. The Clipse reunion is one of the most celebrated runs in recent memory. Two brothers who weathered label wars, solo detours, and a whole era of the game changing underneath them, finally standing on stages together again. And by every account, the tour had been nothing but love. City after city, no incidents, no drama, just two veterans collecting flowers. Malice himself had been saying it on camera for weeks. How good it has been. How easy it has been. How steady it has been. No problems. And then, out of nowhere, a hot dog stand owner decides that the most gracious moment of his tour was actually a crime scene. Look at the contrast in that footage. On one side, you have a man being told the food is on the house, a man expressing gratitude the way his mother raised him to, a man moving like a guest of honor, because that is exactly what the establishment made him. On the other side, you have a performance of outrage so theatrical, so drenched in insults that had nothing to do with the price of a sausage, that it tells on itself. When somebody is genuinely wronged, they talk about the wrong. When somebody is building a moment, they talk about everything else. She talked about his head. She talked about his size. She invoked Flavor Flav for reasons known only to her. That is not a merchant seeking payment. That is a person auditioning for a viral clip, and she got one, just not the role she wanted. And here is the part nobody is talking about. Even in her own telling, the alleged heist of the century involved a man standing still, being thanked by staff, with security present and a camera rolling. If that is theft, it is the politest robbery in recorded history. Malice did not just defend himself with the video. Malice let the video defend him, and there is a difference, and the difference is everything. Anger would have made them equals in the mud. Composure made the truth self-evident. One of the lowest energy accusations of the year got answered with the highest energy response imaginable: peace, receipts, and a God bless. That is a masterclass in what the young folks call never matching the vibration. Somebody tried to drag a legend into the mud over a menu item, and the legend simply stood there being clean. The internet did the rest. And I have to ask you directly, because the comments are going to go to war over this one. If somebody falsely accused you in public, at your job, in front of cameras, would you have the discipline to answer like Malice answered? Or are you matching that energy every single time? Be honest with yourself before you type it. So Snoop Dogg sat down for an interview, and the conversation turned to his wife and her business ventures, and what Snoop Dogg revealed has the entire internet doing double takes. Because it is not a secret anymore that Snoop Dogg's wife bought a strip club. Not a boutique. Not a restaurant. A strip club with male exotic nights, running regularly. And a man in Snoop Dogg's position, a legend, an icon, a man whose entire brand for 3 decades has been built on a very specific image, had every excuse in the world to shut that down, distance himself from it, or at minimum, pretend it was not happening. And Snoop Dogg did the exact opposite. Snoop Dogg showed up. Snoop Dogg walked into that club, and by his own telling, threw money in the air and supported. And when they asked him why, when they asked Snoop Dogg how he could possibly be comfortable with this, his answer was not what anybody expected. Because Snoop Dogg did not talk about the club at all. Snoop Dogg told a story about himself. He took everybody back to a chapter of his life that most celebrities would bury. Snoop Dogg described a period of about 3 years where he was completely infatuated with the pimp lifestyle. And not casually. Snoop Dogg said he went all the way in. Hanging around actual pimps. Dressing like them. Going to players' balls. Making entire movies about it. And he explained where it came from, and this part is real, because Snoop Dogg said that as a kid, the pimp was the superhero in his neighborhood. The car, the money, the slick talk, the fly clothes, the hair laid to perfection. To a young Snoop Dogg, that man had everything. So when Snoop Dogg got the means, he lived it out fully for years. And here is the part that reframes everything. Snoop Dogg said his wife never said a word. Not one word. And it goes further than silence, because Snoop Dogg revealed that for his 35th birthday, his wife did not just tolerate the obsession, she threw him an entire Players Ball-themed birthday party and invited the pimps herself. She supported him through something that, let us be honest, was shenanigans. Complete shenanigans. And she held him down through all of it without flinching. So years later, when the script flipped, when his wife decided to buy a strip club and launch male exotic nights, Snoop Dogg said he was shocked. His exact reaction was basically, wow, honey, a strip club, okay. But then came the decision. And Snoop Dogg framed it as the simplest math in the world. She supported me when I was going through something that I thought was fun and fly, so when she found something she enjoys, something that is her world, what am I supposed to do? Snoop Dogg said support cannot be a one-way street. Whatever she loves, he shows up for, because she showed up for him first. Now, I have thoughts on this, and I am going to share them, but first let me acknowledge what Snoop Dogg got right, because he got something very right. The principle underneath all of this is real. Reciprocity in a marriage is real. A partner who stood by you through your wildest chapter has earned grace in theirs. Snoop Dogg supporting his wife publicly, showing up physically, not hiding, not being embarrassed, that takes a security most men never develop. There are husbands who would fumble a marriage over far less than a strip club, and Snoop Dogg walked in and made it rain out of loyalty. There is something honorable in the instinct. But, and there is a but, and you knew it was coming, here is where I have to keep it 100 with you. Support is not supposed to be blind. The highest form of love is not clapping for everything your partner does. The highest form of love is looking out for the best interest of the other person, even when the truth is uncomfortable. If your spouse is reaching for something that makes them better, support it with everything you have. If your spouse is reaching for something that diminishes them, love says something. A husband should be willing to be corrected, and a husband should be willing to correct, gently, in love. So, is what Snoop Dogg did fair? Reciprocity-wise, yes. Was every piece of it wise? That is a different question, and I want your answer to it in the comments. Is Snoop Dogg the husband of the year, or is this loyalty taken way too far? Hold that thought, because the next story is about a man who has the opposite problem. A man whose support system turned into a firing squad. Rick Ross just answered 50 Cent, and what Rick Ross said might have accidentally exposed the entire music industry. And there is a layer to what Snoop Dogg said that almost got lost in the shock value of the headline, so I want to give it the attention it deserves. Because buried inside the strip club story is one of the most complete philosophies of marriage any celebrity has articulated on camera. Listen to how Snoop Dogg framed the essence of a wife. He described a partner who is a version of you but fully herself, as strong as you and willing to be weak, supportive through anything and all things, vulnerable enough to be human. That is not a throwaway answer. That is a man who has done the math on 3 decades of marriage and arrived at a definition most relationship therapists would co-sign. Snoop Dogg is saying the foundation of the whole thing is reciprocity of support, that the one-way street is where marriages go to die. And then think about what it took for Snoop Dogg to even tell this story. Because the confession at the center of it is not flattering. Snoop Dogg voluntarily told the world that for 3 full years of his adult life, at the height of his fame, he was living out a childhood fantasy that most people would call a moral failing, and that his wife watched the whole thing and never once weaponized it. She did not leave. She did not lecture him in public. She studied what he loved, and on his 35th birthday, she handed it back to him as a celebration, pimps and all. Whatever you think of the lifestyle, that is a level of acceptance that most people will never experience from another human being in their entire lives. Snoop Dogg knows exactly what he was given. You can hear it in how he tells it. So when the moment came to repay it, when his wife bought that club and the whole world waited for Snoop Dogg to be embarrassed, the man made a deposit on 30 years of loyalty. He showed up. He made it rain. He let the internet say whatever it was going to say. And the internet said plenty, believe that. Half the timeline called Snoop Dogg the blueprint for secure masculinity. The other half called it the collapse of standards. And both halves missed the actual question, which is not whether Snoop Dogg should support his wife. Of course he should. The actual question is whether support has a ceiling, whether love that never says no is still love at all, or just applause wearing love's clothes. If you have been anywhere near hip-hop social media this week, you already know 50 Cent has been on one of his legendary trolling campaigns, and the target this time was Rick Ross. Rick Ross dropped his new album, Set in Stone, and the first week numbers came in, and those numbers were not pretty. We are talking around 22,000 in week 1, followed by a drop to around 20,000 in week 2. And 50 Cent, being 50 Cent, could not resist. 50 Cent posted an image declaring that Rick Ross hit a new chart low, and then 50 Cent added the caption that has been screenshotted a million times by now. He said, "You sir, I am sorry, it is over. You cannot fake it forever." Now, pause right there, because that caption is doing a lot of work. 50 Cent is not just laughing at a number. 50 Cent is making an accusation. 50 Cent is saying the entire Rick Ross persona, the biggest boss, the Maybach empire, all of it is fake, and that the album numbers are the proof that the illusion finally collapsed. That is the frame 50 Cent tried to install in everybody's head. And for about 24 hours, it worked. The troll pages ran with it. The engagement accounts feasted. And everybody waited to see if Rick Ross would take the bait. And Rick Ross responded. But Rick Ross did not respond the way 50 Cent wanted. Rick Ross did not get emotional. Rick Ross did not spiral. Rick Ross got on camera, sat in his empire, and delivered what might be the most interesting counterargument anybody has made against the numbers game in years. Rick Ross said, yes, 22,000 the first week, 20 the second, and then Rick Ross said the thing that turned the whole exchange on its head. Rick Ross said those drastic fall-offs you see with a lot of these other artists happen when the numbers are inflated. The bots. And then Rick Ross dropped the line of the week. Rick Ross said the new flex is no bots. Let that sit for a second. The new flex is no bots. Rick Ross is standing in front of the world admitting his first week number is modest, and instead of hiding from it, he is weaponizing it. Rick Ross is saying, my numbers are real people, and everybody else's suspicious supernova first weeks, followed by catastrophic drops, are the tell of purchase streams. Keep it genuine, keep it pure, let the music fight the battles. That is what Rick Ross said. And then Rick Ross went further, and this is where he started swinging at 50 Cent's entire empire. Rick Ross asked the question that nobody in the troll economy wants to answer. If these artists genuinely have a gazillion followers who move for their music in week 1, why does nothing else they sell move? Why do the sneakers flop? Why does the liquor underperform? Why does every product outside the music fail if the fanbase is really that massive and that mobilized? And Rick Ross did not stop there, because Rick Ross started talking about longevity. Rick Ross said, we are playing the long game. We are 20 years deep. We are still here. We are still celebrating a body of work that has the streets talking. Rick Ross even threw a jab wrapped in a compliment, saying he likes the Lloyd Banks sneakers better than the rest, and that 50 Cent should give Lloyd Banks his own high top, which is the kind of layered troll that only Rick Ross can pull off. Because it sounds like praise until you realize he just ranked somebody else's artist above 50 Cent's own crew, while telling 50 Cent to go focus on footwear since the music angle is not working anymore. Now, here is my honest read, and I am going to give it to you straight because you deserve more than cheerleading. Part of what Rick Ross said is genuinely sharp. The bot conversation is real. The industry knows it, the labels know it, the streaming platforms know it, and the fans are finally starting to know it. When an album does cartoon numbers in week 1 and then falls off a cliff by week 3, something in the machinery is not organic. Rick Ross pointing at that and saying the emperor has no clothes is the most credible thing Rick Ross has said in a while. But, and again, there is a but. The comment section did not let Rick Ross cook without resistance, and honestly, some of those comments were funnier and sharper than anything 50 Cent posted. One person said the new flex is going double aluminum. Another said this man has been in character for years. Another said he stopped acting the second the camera cut off. And that is the counterargument in a nutshell. Because the skeptics are asking a fair question too. Is Rick Ross making a principled stand against fake numbers, or is Rick Ross retrofitting a philosophy around a flop? When the numbers are low and you call low numbers noble, people are going to wonder which came first, the principle or the problem. And this is where the story gets bigger than Rick Ross and 50 Cent, because look at the landscape right now. We are in an era where sold-out arena tours are producing album sales that would embarrass a mixtape. Artists packing buildings night after night, then dropping projects that nobody buys. The gap between the live crowd and the purchase button has never been wider, and it is forcing everybody to ask what fame in 2026 actually means. Is it real demand, or is it a highlight reel running on rented momentum? Because if the biggest names in the game cannot convert followers into sneakers, drinks, or first-week units, then the follower count was never measuring what we thought it measured. That is why this Rick Ross and 50 Cent exchange matters more than the average Instagram troll war. On the surface, it is two 40-something moguls throwing shots like it is 2007. Underneath, it is a referendum on authenticity in an industry that industrialized fake enthusiasm. And I know where I want your take. Drop it in the comments. Is the new flex really no bots, or is that the smoothest excuse a billionaire ever made for a bad week? And while you are typing, keep watching, because the next story is the one that is going to sit in your chest for the rest of the day. Shaquille O'Neal just had a conversation with his own son that every parent and every child in America needs to hear, and it ends with 4 words I have not been able to shake. And because we are being forensic about this, let us look at the evidence Rick Ross put on the table, because the sneaker line was not a random flex. It was a diagnostic. Think about how the modern music machine works. An artist moves a mountain of units in week 1, the blogs crown them, the stands print the banners, and then week 2 arrives and the number falls off a building. Rick Ross is saying that collapse pattern is the fingerprint of inflation, that when the opening week is purchased, there is no real floor underneath it, and gravity does the rest. Meanwhile, his own line on the graph, 20 to then 20, is flat. Boring. Stable. And Rick Ross is betting that boring stability reads as flesh and blood listeners who actually pressed play twice. Is he right? Partially. A flat week 2 curve does usually signal an organic audience. But a flat curve at a low altitude also just means fewer people showed up in the first place, and this is where the debate splits clean down the middle. The Rick Ross camp says he is the only mogul honest enough to stand in his real number. The 50 Cent camp says dressing a flop in philosophy is the oldest trick in the mogul handbook, and that if the album had done 200,000, we would not be hearing a sermon about purity. We would be hearing about the biggest boss doing biggest boss things. Both of those things can be true at the same time, and the fact that both can be true is exactly why this story has legs. Then zoom all the way out, because the timing of this fight is what makes it historic. We are living through the strangest demand crisis the industry has ever produced. Acts are selling out buildings, real tickets, real bodies and seats, and then releasing albums that sell like localized rumors. We have watched artists pack an arena in the same quarter their project bricked. We have watched rollouts where songs that already had massive standalone streaming numbers got folded into album bundles so the old heat could cosplay as new demand. The audience has not figured out whether it is being sold music or being sold arithmetic, and, honestly, a growing share of the audience suspects the calendar itself is cursed. That certain release years are simply dead zones where nothing sticks no matter how big the name is. And 50 Cent knows all of this. That is the part that makes 50 Cent so dangerous in a fight like this one. 50 Cent does not attack the art, because attacking the art is debatable. 50 Cent attacks the number, because the number is not debatable, the number just sits there being low while you explain it. That is the whole 50 Cent method, 20 years running. Find the one fact that hurts, post it with a caption that sounds like condolences, and let the target write the essay. And Rick Ross wrote the essay. A confident, quotable, genuinely interesting essay. But an essay is still what you write when the scoreboard is not on your side, and both of these men know it, which is why neither of them is actually angry. This is 2 grandmasters moving pieces they have moved 100 times, and the rest of the industry is the board. Shaquille O'Neal has lived a life that looks perfect from the outside. For championships, Hall of Fame, business empire, television every week. By every metric the world uses, Shaquille O'Neal won the game of life so completely that they should probably rename the trophy after him. And yet the conversation that Shaquille O'Neal just had with his son pulled back a curtain that most legends keep nailed shut forever. Here is the setup. His son came to him with news. His son has been working out every day, talking to coaches, and he got invited to try out for the Kings. His son wants to play ball. His son wants the life. And you would expect Shaquille O'Neal, of all people, to light up at that. The heir to the throne, following the bloodline, chasing the family business. That is supposed to be the proud dad moment. But Shaquille O'Neal did not smile. Shaquille O'Neal got quiet, and Shaquille O'Neal started asking questions that were not really questions. They were in accounting. Shaquille O'Neal looked at his son and told him, "We do not need basketball." And then Shaquille O'Neal walked him through what basketball costs, from the inside, from a man who has been in that world since 1989. How many birthday parties did I miss? A lot. How many school plays did I miss? A lot. How many mornings did you wake up and I was not there? A lot. And his son confirmed it, because his son lived it. His son admitted that growing up, the kids would always wonder if dad was going to be there, and they learned early that the answer was usually no, because dad was playing basketball, because dad was busy. And to his son's credit, he said he respects it now, that he understands every NBA family pays that tax. But Shaquille O'Neal was not done, because Shaquille O'Neal was not just warning his son about the schedule. Shaquille O'Neal was warning him about the sacrifice at the center of the whole machine. And that is when Shaquille O'Neal said the sentence that turned a sports conversation into something much heavier. Shaquille O'Neal said, "I lost a family trying to be great. I lost a family trying to be great." Read that again. Not I missed some dinners. Not the schedule was tough. Lost. A family. The greatest physical force the sport has ever seen, a man who bent rims and franchises to his will, sitting across from his own child and admitting that the price of the mountain was the people at the base of it. And then Shaquille O'Neal gave his son the ultimatum that every ambitious person eventually has to face. If you want to be great, you sacrifice everything. And if you are not willing to put 1,000% into it, then do not do it at all. Come run the business side with me instead. Get us back to number one that way. Now let me tell you why this hit me so hard, and why I think it is hitting everybody who has seen the clip. Because we live in a culture that sells greatness as a pure good. Grind harder. Want it more. Outwork everybody. The entire motivational economy is built on the idea that the only sin is not wanting it badly enough. And here comes Shaquille O'Neal, a man who actually summited the mountain that all the hustle slogans point at, standing at the top, holding the trophy, and telling his own blood, "The air up here cost me my family, so count the cost before you climb." That is not bitterness. That is the most honest thing a successful person can say, and almost none of them ever say it. And it forces the uncomfortable math that nobody wants to do. The trade-off is real. If you pour 1,000% into the arena eats first, and the people at home eat whatever is left. Sometimes greatness and presence are not a balancing act. Sometimes they are a custody battle, and one of them always wins. Shaquille O'Neal is telling us which one won in his house, and the fact that he can help his kids become great now, from the top, with the empire, does not undo the birthdays. He knows it. That is why he said it. That is why the conversation exists at all. He is trying to make sure his son walks in with his eyes open, because Shaquille O'Neal walked in with his eyes on the prize and only counted the cost after it was already paid. So now I am turning it to you, because this one is not really about basketball. If you are a parent chasing something big, where is your line? And if you are the child of somebody who chased something big, which side of this conversation are you sitting on? Tell me in the comments and be honest, because half the internet is going to lie about this one. And notice what Shaquille O'Neal offered as the alternative, because that detail matters more than people realize. Shaquille O'Neal did not tell his son to go get a safe little job and forget ambition. Shaquille O'Neal pointed at the empire and said, "Come take this over, come run the business, help me get the brand back to number one." In other words, greatness still lives in this house, it just changed rooms. What Shaquille O'Neal was really handing his son was the cheat code he never had, a way to chase something massive without paying the occupancy tax that the playing life charges. The league takes your body and your calendar. The boardroom lets you keep your mornings. Shaquille O'Neal learned that by losing the mornings, all of them, one city at a time. And let us be honest about the economics underneath the emotion, because this is not 1995 anymore. The gap between what the grind pays and what the grind costs has never been wider. The money moved, the hours did not, and the families are still the line item that gets cut first. A whole generation of kids has been raised on highlight reels of other people's fathers, watching greatness on demand while their own great ones were on a plane. That is why this clip travels beyond sports. Every nurse on a double, every founder in year 3, every artist on the road heard Shaquille O'Neal say a lot, and felt that count in their own kitchen. And finally, we close with the story that ties every single thread together, because Fabio Foreign just did something nobody saw coming. Fabio Foreign, a man whose entire catalog is built on a lifestyle that is the exact opposite of church, just stepped into gospel territory. Fabio Foreign dropped a gospel record, and the message inside it is the reason this whole video exists. In the record, Fabio Foreign delivers a thought that stopped me cold. Fabio Foreign says the only way to show that you have faith in God is to not care, meaning you move anyway, you do the thing anyway, because you trust that God has already handled the outcome. You just have to get there. And coming from Fabio Foreign, that is not a throwaway bar. That is a man publicly leaning into a spiritual pivot in front of an audience that did not sign up for one. And say what you want about the execution, that takes a kind of courage the rap game rarely rewards. Because understand what a pivot like this costs a man in Fabio Foreign's position. His lane is paved, painted, and profitable. The audience that made him did not subscribe for sermons, and the industry that pays him has a formula it would prefer he keep following. Every artist who has ever stepped toward faith mid-career has heard the same whispers. It is a phase. It is a rollout angle. It is a crisis dressed as a calling. Maybe it is. Time grades everybody, and if this is a costume, it will come off the same way the bot numbers come off, slowly and then all at once. But if it is real, then Fabio Foreign just did the bravest thing a performer can do, which is risk the crowd's confusion to answer a poll the crowd did not put there. And I want to be careful here, because encouraging this is not the same as crowning it. Growth is not the song. Growth is what happens after the song, when the cameras go home and the same temptations are still on the tour rider. If Fabio Foreign keeps leaning toward the things that glorify the Most High and away from the things that do not, then this record is chapter 1 of something worth watching. And if he does not, well, the culture has a long memory and a short mercy. Either way, he opened the door, and doors like that do not close quietly. Because look at what we have actually covered today. Malice, falsely accused in front of the world, answering with grace and receipts instead of rage. Snoop Dogg, answering his wife's loyalty with loyalty of his own, even when the whole internet had opinions. Rick Ross, standing in front of a bad number and refusing to buy a fake good one, telling an entire industry that the new flex is no bots. Shaquille O'Neal, trading the trophy talk for the truth, admitting to his son that greatness built him for a family. And Fabio Foreign, stepping out of the lane that made him rich to point at something higher. 5 men. 5 spotlights. 5 different versions of the same question. When the moment comes, and it always comes, do you perform or do you stand on what is real? The hot dog lady performed, and Malice's calm exposed her. The trolls performed, and the bot conversation exposed them. The hustle culture performed, and Shaquille O'Neal's confession exposed the invoice. Real always outlasts the performance. It might take 20 years, it might take a Polish hot dog going viral, but the real always surfaces. That is the thread. That is the whole sermon. And I told you at the top of this video that one screaming restaurant owner, one strip club, one relentless troll, one heartbreaking confession, and one gospel record were all the same story. Now you see it. The culture keeps asking who is real. This week, 5 men answered. So let me know in the comments, and I mean really let me know. Was Malice right to respond with grace, or should he have matched that energy? Is Snoop Dogg's loyalty beautiful or blind? Is Rick Ross exposing the bots or excusing the flop? Would you tell your kid what Shaquille O'Neal told his? And does Fabio Foreign's gospel pivot sound like growth to you, or something else? 5 questions, 1 comment section, no wrong answers except the fake ones. If you made it all the way to this point, you're the real one this entire video is about, and you already know what to do. Hit the like so the algorithm knows the real one showed up today. Subscribe if you have not, because tomorrow somebody else is going to show us exactly who they are, and we're going to be right here to talk about it. And check out the videos on your screen right now, because the last time we did a reckoning like this, the comments turned into a courtroom, and you are going to want to see how that trial ended. Until next time, stay real, stay prayed up, and remember, the performance always ends, but the truth never does.